Hello and welcome to Counterpressed on The Ringer and Spotify. I'm in the studio with Gilly Flaherty, Jessy Humphreys, and special guest making his debut on Counterpressed, Nedum Onuoha.
Thanks, everyone.
Clap him in.
Thank you.
On today's show, we're going to be previewing Groups A and B of Euro 2025 as we get excited for the start of the competition. Nedum, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in today because I know you've been on Club World Cup duty. You're a busy man.
I'm a hero.
You're
honestly.
a hero. You really are. You've come down to Manchester for the occasion. Been wanting to get you on Counterpress for a very long time. Obviously, I know you've been doing bits and pieces on the WSL ever since you retired, really.
Essentially, yeah.
And you're going to be working during the Euros.
That's right, yeah.
And we might hopefully get you on for a couple more episodes.
Yeah, if you want me, yeah, let's do it.
Very excited.
Yeah.
Are you excited for your Counterpress debut?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I'm a bit nervous as well.
Don't be nervous.
No, I'm a bit nervous just because, I like your energy. I'm trying to see, can I fit in with this energy? I've listened to so many episodes so far, and I know there's going to be some hot takes flying around and all this, trying to find my space, but it should be good.
Maybe some hot takes.
I feel like pressure as well, though, now to be extra fun.
To say something crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that.
Jill, haven't seen you in forever.
I know, I've had a nice break, really.
Yeah, what have you been up to?
Just school, working at school, having some weekends just to have a bit of a life before obviously football starts up again.
And what are you doing during the Euros? Where are you working?
So I'm up in Manchester doing BBC. Got a little bit of TalkSport as well for covering Spain. So yeah, I've got a busy couple of weeks.
Are you excited for the Euros?
Yeah, I like it. I've always, even when not playing, when I was younger, I always used to love it, being able to watch games that you necessarily wouldn't be able to, teams that you wouldn't necessarily have the chance to watch. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being a jam-packed couple of weeks.
Jessy, you're going out pretty early for the
I'm
opener.
actually, compared to everyone else seems to be going this week.
I know, I find that confusing because England still have a warm-up game on Sunday, which we're doing.
I'm going for England's matchday -1.
Yeah, so
mainly because I've got all of the British summer of sport to fit in that week.
Yeah, you're doing Wimbledon.
I'm going to go to Wimbledon Monday, Tuesday. I'm going to Edgbaston Wednesday.
Wow.
For the test.
Oof.
And then, I'll fly out on the Thursday.
Yeah, non-stop. I am going out on the 12th, so that is before England-Wales, the final group game, which is could be pretty spicy. So a little bit later than you, so I'm excited to soak up some early vibes. But let's get stuck into those groups. So first, we're looking at Group A, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, and then Group B, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, Spain. So let's get into Group A after this. This episode is presented by Pepsi Max. Pepsi Max has always supported both women's and men's football. So to help make sure the next 50 years are as legendary as the last, they've made an inspiring film called Refresh the Game, featuring current stars like Lauren James and Leah Williamson, alongside legends like Pelé. Refresh the Game celebrates the unapologetic challenger spirit and talent of women's football. Watch it now on Pepsi Max channels. Pepsi Max, proud sponsors of the UEFA Women's Euro this summer. So Group A is the Scandinavian party group. We've got 3 nations from Scandinavia in this
Sorry,
group.
am I not allowed to laugh at her jokes?
No, you can laugh at her
Okay,
jokes.
cool, just checking in.
Finland. Is it Scandinavia?
That's Scandinavia.
I think they see themselves as outside of Scandinavia.
Oh, wow.
But maybe let me Google it and check. I used to work with a Finnish guy, and I'm pretty sure I said this to him before, and he was like, no.
Was he really offended?
Yeah.
So they're just separate, they're just their own thing.
So within 5 minutes, I've already offended
the Nordic countries.
Sometimes other countries like Finland and Iceland are included. They are more commonly referred to as part of the Nordic group of countries. Okay, so let me rephrase that for the good people of Norway
I just
and
want
Iceland.
us to be geographically, politically correct.
Sorry, Finland and Iceland. So this is the Nordic group. It's not the Scandinavian official group. It's the Nordic group. So Denmark, Norway and Sweden are officially the Scandinavian trio. So, I'll rephrase that. Welcome to the Nordic group.
Plus Switzerland.
Plus Switzerland. Finland, Iceland, Norway, Switzerland. Obviously, we've got the hosts in there. So we'll get on to how good their chances are of joining the ranks of teams that have hosted and won the Euros. But let's start with Finland. ranked 26th in the world. They were in the 2022 Euros, actually did a couple of their games. A famous meeting at MK Dons Stadium.
That was when you did both games.
In one day,
You
of
drove
course.
from MK Dons and met me at Brentford.
Yeah, how could I forget that amazing day? Because obviously Alexa Putellas had done her ACL in the build-up, so there was a lot of Alexia watch on the bench for that game. And I believe Finland did actually maybe score.
I think they scored but still lost. That rings a bell.
Yeah, so we're being nostalgic about Euro 2022 already. But I think this is going to be an interesting group because it's very open on the surface. And actually, it's a sort of group that I'm sure lots of other top seed countries would have looked at and thought, I would like to be in that group. But for Finland, I don't think they'll think that there's no chance for them to get out of this group. But on the surface of it, you would probably think that Norway, Iceland or Switzerland have the better chances. The two Finnish players that lots of people will be familiar with, Evelina Summonen, who plays at Spurs, a very kind of tough tackling, good midfielder who can kind of do everything and will be very important to how they play. And then a player who, question mark over how fit she's going to be, is Jutta Rantala, who is kind of their main playmaker, goal scorer, but is coming back from injury. So those are the kind of two names that lots of listeners will be familiar with, and probably how they perform at this tournament is going to be very decisive in how Finland might do in this group. Does anyone want to sort of give their prediction of how they think Finland might navigate this one?
Well, I think Finland can enjoy maybe being more of the unknown quantity, because one of the things that's annoyed me about this Euros draw is how much it's matched up with the Nations League.
Yes.
So the rest of this group have all just played each other twice as part of the Nations League, whereas Finland were in the sort of B League. So they've kind of been off doing their own thing, and those other teams will know each other really well as a result. So maybe the only thing I'm going to give Finland is the sort of unknown quantity question mark, even though they probably are the lowest quality team in the group.
They've had some good results in that Nations League B league, so against teams considered a similar level to them. But for all of these games, they're going to be playing up, and I think that is a bit of a challenge. Obviously, in the last Euros, they had a bit of a tough group, didn't make it out. So I think probably realistically, this is a situation where they're not going to make it out of the group.
Do we think vibes matter?
Do vibes matter? Vibes always matter.
So if you've won a few games coming in, surely vibes matter then, no?
Yeah, but it's
and I
how
will say
they compete.
All of these other teams in the group, I will say, and I think this group's quite fun as a result, they've all sort of got question marks over their own capabilities.
100%.
So I think this group will just generally feel quite even, and I think maybe not Finland per se, but I do think you maybe see a little bit of a surprise in terms of who goes through.
Well, for the surprise for me could be Iceland. I like the look of Iceland.
I was burnt by Iceland, ironically. Thanks, Nedum.
I'm sorry. I'm having too much fun.
In 2022, because I went quite high on them and then they disappointed me.
But I think they've made progress, Jessy.
You think I should open my heart back to them?
I think you should open your heart. They've had, some decent-ish results.
They've not won in 2025.
Yes, that's an issue.
They're
That is a
saving it
vibes
for the
issue.
Euros.
But they only narrowly lost to France. They drew with Norway. They drew with Switzerland, like you say, in their Nations League group. So they've been decent against those sides that they're going to have to play here. And I think, I think they could be the ones who could do something interesting and cause a bit of an upset for me. But maybe I'm being too hopeful. Jill, what do you think?
Well, I actually had Iceland in second when I was looking at the groups of where I think they'd finish, because on Opta Stats as well, they say out of all the groups, this is the group where the probability of they put Norway as top. But then in regards to the other three teams, it's the closest in regards to who could finish second, third and fourth in there. So, I mean, I will always have a soft spot for Iceland, though, because of Dagny. Obviously.
And she's in the squad?
She's in the squad.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think even if she weren't in the squad, I'd still be supporting Iceland because I have a good good relationship with her. But yeah, so I've got a little bit of a soft spot for them. So I'll put them as to go second.
What's the opening fixtures? What are the opening fixtures in this group?
Well, I think the challenge is going to be for Iceland is goals.
Yes.
They did have a bit of a chaotic 3-3 draw with Switzerland in the Nations League. But I think that's where they lack. They are opening the tournament against Finland. And then
That's a good way for them to start, I think.
yeah, they can definitely win that game. And then Switzerland-Norway is the later evening, obviously big
Which also
opener for
annoys
Switzerland.
me. Why is the opener not the opener?
I know the host should be playing
host should
first, really. So I think that's it's a nice way to start. Jessy, I want to talk about Iceland's big star, who will kind of be the main player people keeping an eye on. Recently got moved to the NWSL with Angel City. Svendis Jónsdóttir, people will know her from Wolfsburg. Obviously, very talented individual, and will be their main creative outlet, who they'll be hoping will have a good tournament to give them a chance to get out of this group.
Yeah, I think she's obviously had a bit of a mixed couple of seasons with Wolfsburg, like a number of their players have, I think, through no fault of her own, really. My concern about her in this group in particular is she's someone who I think really thrives in those kind of transition moments, and I don't know if many of these teams they're playing against are going to set up in a way that allows Iceland to play it like that. That being said, she also has her famous long throw, and Iceland are quite a tall team. So I would just like to see some long throws. That's what I'm looking for from this group. Yeah, but she's definitely sort of the one to watch here. And it'll be interesting to see, if she can have an impact. Because I think, again, there was a lot of sort of excitement around her in 2022, and we didn't really see the best of her. Obviously, she's now got this move. She's going to a new environment. And I think there'll be a lot of focus on her.
Yeah, I think set pieces are going to be a bit of a thing in this group because you've got a lot of teams who kind of like to play it simple. I think we'll be playing pretty low risk, and that's why I think it's also an exciting opportunity for anyone that does kind of want to take a few more risks than others may want to do, which leads us on to Norway, who have had some really poor tournaments recently, whether that's the World Cup or the Euros. Obviously, in the Euros, there was a lot of soul searching for them. They got absolutely battered by England in the group stage, as England obviously went on to win the whole tournament, and then the World Cup wasn't much better. They are still this team stacked with stars. Ada Hegerberg, Caroline Graham-Hansen, Ingrid Engen, Guro Reiten. On the surface there, you've got a team full of stars. You've now got yet another coach, Gemma Granger, who was briefly the Wales coach, didn't end up being the Wales coach that took them to a first major tournament. And it has been quite patchy, but because it's still Norway, there's always this sense that could they go and finally do something? And they've been blessed with quite a nice group.
I will not be tricked.
You won't be tricked again.
No, I see what you're trying to do. You're dangling the big names in front of me.
I'm going to be tricked.
You want me to buy. I'm
sorry.
I've been underwhelmed, generally.
So you don't think they make it out of the group?
No, I think they'll make it out of the group.
You've taken the bait then, of course.
But I believe that.
Okay.
But I don't, I'm not, I've never been, particularly moved by Gemma Granger. And I thought that was quite a surprising choice from Norway. I watched some of their games against France, and they just did this kind of classic Norway thing where they do create and they get into quite dangerous positions, but it's just you have all these attacking players in particular, and you think, well, if you get into dangerous positions, surely something will happen, but it never really seems to happen. Obviously, Hegerberg's kind of in this funny position where she's now back to full fitness, but kind of lost her Lyon place to a certain extent. But she got made captain, so they moved on from Mara Mjelde to make her captain. Celine Bizet's kind of come into the team a little bit more, sort of at Guru Wrighton's expense, but obviously Wrighton's been injured, throughout the season, so it'll be interesting to see where Granger lands on that. Yeah, I mean, like, on paper, like, this is still, like, a great team and a great squad. I think defensively, and again, we saw that before, like, they've still struggled to have, like, good defenders come through. But there's just, they don't move me in the way they should.
Jill, what's your thoughts? It's a who's who of WSL names in their squad. I mean, you mentioned Maren Mjelde, 8th major tournament for her, which is incredible. Has just left Everton. Didn't get her contract renewed there, but you've got Frida Marnham as well, Lisa Narsland from Manchester United. There's so many quality players there, but there's been so many cursed major tournaments for them recently. And I think things can unravel quite quickly, especially when you've got so many big names. Yeah,
and I agree with what Jessy said. I think they'll have no issue getting out of the group, but I just feel like sometimes in when this competition's gone further on, I always expect them to do a little bit better, and I think that's when they've just deflated me a little bit, in the sense of you feel like they could be the one to maybe get a result against teams that, would it be expected to beat Norway? And I always think, I reckon Norway can do it here and sort of be the underdog in that situation and win. But I agree. I think that considering the names that they've got, obviously that we all know so well as well in WSL, but also in the general game, you'd be expecting them to be more consistent once they obviously get out of the groups.
Nedum, as someone who was part of a squad full of stars that unravelled, aka QPR.
Yeah, there we go.
There's my segue.
There we go.
I knew she was going to get it.
Tell us what it's like being part of a squad where it all falls apart.
I'd like to think that on the international stage, that sense of like nationalism is something, or nationalism, but like patriotism, whatever the word is going to be the thing that draws people together. I think on a club basis, everyone's got different objectives, but for your national team, you can't change your nationality. So when things get tough, you'd hope that people will be able to rally around each other. But then, as we've seen in recent weeks across all versions of the game, like, coaches can be a big factor in this. If people don't like their coach, then they find it harder to perform. You've seen some people retiring, some people saying, I'm not going to play for this person, and so on. So it does get a bit tricky. But the names that you mentioned that's a good team. From Norway, that's a really, really good team. And I've just gone a little bit further ahead here. I've looked at the other groups, and say if Norway did go into the knockouts, who could they potentially play where they would be a favourite that you can think of in any of the groups? Because surely, when
they get through to the quarterfinals, who are they going to be able to beat?
Not necessarily who they're going to beat. Who they're going to have the pressure to beat because they're the favourite. Because maybe it suits them to be an underdog. Because I think the moments where you're speaking of sound like positions where they should have won, but they haven't. But maybe this angle's a bit different this time because, like, as I say,
expectations are so low.
Well, yeah, just pick it up from the floor.
I also think in previous tournaments, they've been very quick to throw their coaches under the bus. And it's quite interesting that they went for an English coach in Gemma Granger, which is unique for them. And I don't know if that is a positive or a negative in terms of how she manages a squad who, because there are so many stars, have been very vocal. I mean, Ada Hegberg, after they got smashed by England in the last Euros, really went for the jugular on her teammates and the coach. And it was kind of similar after how poor they were in the World Cup. And I think because they've got this easy-ish group on the surface, that might help because it seems like they need confidence and they need it quickly, and a few wins for them could actually mean quite good momentum.
I kind of agree, but then this was what was funny at the World Cup because their World Cup group was really easy as well, and then they really struggled to come through it. And it's kind of the flip side of, on paper, this group, again, they've played lots of these teams recently, so maybe they will feel more confident about that. But if you start slipping up, then you create sort of that early doors pressure, and suddenly, you're in this position where you're desperately trying to beat New Zealand or whatever to get out. Okay, that was the World Cup, but like that was the thing where it was like suddenly all of this stuff where it was teams you'd think they should beat in their sleep were becoming really tricky for them.
Yeah, and it's been a mixed 2025 for them as well. Let's move on to the hosts, Switzerland, ranked 23rd in the world. I think they come into it as massive underdogs, really, and they've got nothing to lose. They will hope that they will get kind of a bit of a boost from being the host. There's always a bit of a home advantage. They've been doing this really annoying scavenger hunt to announce their 23-player squad, which is extremely annoying because they're filtering through different players every day. We're recording on Monday, the 23rd of June. The squad is meant to be finished today. But as of this morning, there's a lot of names that listeners will recognise from the WSL. Obviously, Leah Volti, who is kind of the golden girl for the hosts. She's been doing a travel blog. She's on all the posters. She's an official ambassador. Alicia Lehmann, now at Juventus, has been spending much of the year as part of the Baller League and not doing much else. Noel Maritz, obviously, former Arsenal, Aston Villa player. And then the kind of young, exciting forward who it was announced on Sunday has been signed by Manchester City. So we'll get onto that in a second, Nedum. Obviously, a club with big connection to you. Iman Bini, or Benny, I don't know how you pronounce her last name. Extremely young. She's only 18, but she was in the Swiss League team of the season. She is in the 23-player squad. How much of a part she'll play, given how young she is, it remains to be seen. But a really exciting young talent and adds to City's kind of real strategy of getting young players and trying to develop them. Nedum, a quick word on that. From a City perspective, are you excited about
absolutely.
that signing?
Yeah, all her man's up. I've not seen that much of her, but hopefully get a chance to watch her at the Euros. And then if she's like setting the world alight, it's a great signing, obviously. And it was never in doubt. But it's interesting you say that how much will she play because she's young? Well, if she's good enough, then she's going to play, isn't she?
Yeah, and Pia Sundhaga's generally seemed willing. You know, we've seen Sydney Shantley break into the team. Iman Bene's got sort of picked up like 10 caps or so. She was slated to go to the World Cup, but did her ACL on the eve of the tournament. So, you know, I do think there's a chance we will see some of her. And, you know, it feels like Switzerland have had some of these players coming through at sort of just the right time, because that squad was starting to feel like quite old, I think. But now it does feel like there's a handful of players sort of across the pitch which can maybe, you know, put some question marks into opposition's minds. Although they are another team who've not won in 2025.
True, but they won last year against France, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
But what does that mean? Is that a good thing to win against France, or is it France, the up and down nature of France, that doesn't carry the same value anymore?
No, I think obviously it's a good thing to win against France. I think France feel like a different team now than they were then. But yeah, of course, that's like confidence boosting. And like, look, Sundhaga's like about as experienced an operator as you can get coming into something like this. The football's not necessarily going to set the world alight. I still think the fact that she managed Brazil is like one of the most criminal things I've ever seen. But you know what you're going to get with her, and I think for a team like Switzerland, that should suit them to a certain extent, even if results haven't been amazing. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's kind of fascinating, right? Like, there's no way Switzerland are going into this tournament thinking they're going to win it. But like the last two tournaments have been won by the hosts, obviously. So I think it'll be interesting to see sort of what that support looks like, how that inspires them, like what they take from that. Because this group is, you know, you'd think they do have a good shot of getting out of this group.
Sundhaga, very familiar name. She's worked with China, Sweden, USA, and Brazil most recently at the 2023 World Cup. So it's a major tournament specialist coach that they brought in for this home tournament. Jessy, you mentioned how this team is really reflective of a Nations League group that was similar. So in those games that Switzerland have recently played against some of these teams, they lost 1-0 to Norway. They drew 3-3 with Iceland. They lost 2-1 to Norway, and they drew 0-0 with Iceland. So it's been a mixed bag, but there is the magic of being hosts and feeling, you know, unstoppable when you've got that home crowd behind you. Gilly, do you think that could make a massive difference for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would only probably take you so far. Having the support of the home crowd. I also do feel, I feel really I feel really sorry for Bachmann as well, obviously for doing her ACL. And I just think for players like that, like when you talk about like that side of things, like for her to obviously been able, everyone knows how good Ramona Bachmann is anyway. She doesn't need the spotlight on her, but I just think for her to obviously miss out on the chance of obviously being a part of the Euros as a home nation, hosting it. I was gutted to see that, but it gives other players, especially other younger players, the opportunity. And probably that spotlight not being on one player as such, and other players having to step up. But I do think the support from the crowds and stuff, like that's going to carry him, but he'll only be able to carry him so far.
Yeah, absolutely gutting for Ramona Bachmann, because she would have loved to be able to play in this home tournament. And, given her age as well, it's probably unlikely she might get another chance to compete with Switzerland at a major tournament. Let's talk about quickly round things up. Who are the two teams we think make it out of Group A? I'm going for Norway and Iceland. So sorry, Switzerland.
I'll go Norway and Switzerland. I think Switzerland will do it.
I've gone Norway, Iceland.
Oh, gosh. I'll go Norway, Finland for the vibes.
Finland!
Wow.
Whoa! Crazy.
Love
wow.
that. Love that.
Wow, I love that, Nedum. I love that. Okay, that's enough Group A. Let's talk about Group B next. So Group B, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, Spain. Of course, you look at this and you feel like you already know who is going to top this group, and that would most likely be Spain. But it does feel like second place is seriously up for grabs. But let's get stuck into Belgium first. Ranked 20th. Obviously, recently got a big result against England, beating England 3-2 in a really weird England performance that was rescued by an amazing Michelle Adjuman debut goal. They were really up and down in this Nations League group. They had kind of a big win against Portugal, obviously that amazing win against against England, which really rattled England as well, because Belgium understandably celebrated it hard. And I remember Karen Carney on ITV was not best pleased about it.
I'd forgotten about that. That was so
funny. What happened?
Well, if I was Tessa Villa, I would be going and giving it the big one. And she was. They all were. They were celebrating really hard because they'd just beaten the European champions. And I can't remember exactly what Karen said, but she just basically said she thought they were celebrating like they'd won the World Cup, basically, is what she said. And it was disrespectful. But I thought, if I was in their shoes, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. Same. And then England, in the return game, smashed them. They got smashed by Spain, but then also had another game in which they narrowly just lost 3-2. So they're a little bit weird and unpredictable. But this is actually a group that they could try and get out of and do something with. They managed to do that in the last Euros when they were in a group with Italy. Italy bombed and Belgium came out, and it was a really kind of historic moment for them to get to the quarterfinals. So I think they will feel like they're such a sort of on their day team, and I think there's clearly a real kind of collective buy-in and energy there. I feel like Belgium will give themselves a good chance against a team they know well in Portugal and a team they did well against in Italy in the last Euros, albeit it's a very different Italy that played then. Yeah,
for me, Belgium are just a team who could end up running a little bit hot and cold. They obviously brought in Peter Gunnarsdottir, who was linked to the Chelsea job, linked to the Aston Villa job, a manager who's obviously quite highly thought of, if not necessarily super well known. And yeah, we've seen them have these decent results. They're very WSL coded, some cracking WSL legends in this team. Nikki Everard, RIP. She's not dead. She's just amnesiac. Sorry Keys, my favourite. Sorry Keys. Sorry Keys. Justine van Havermet, sadly no longer of Everton. She's always been one of my faves because she's just so tall, and she's played everywhere now. She came in and was signed for Reading as a striker, and then this season she ended up playing centre back for Everton because they had such a big injury crisis. She can do it all, and she's absolutely massive. Always been a fan favourite for me. And yeah, also just really enjoying Tessa Vallot still living her best life.
She absolutely cooked England in that game. They couldn't handle her.
Some say that's when Serena Wiegman realised Millie Bright could not start centre back. I think I don't know if they've got a chance. I think for me, lots of this group depends less on Belgium and Portugal and more on whether Italy bottle, because I think Italy have the talent advantage, but don't always show up at these tournaments. But I really enjoy Belgium as a cult favourite team.
Yeah, I think they could be. I mean, Nedum, you want to talk about vibes. I think Belgium could be the vibes team in this group for me.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Even more so than, say, Italy, who've gotten some really good results against the bigger nations in the last few months.
But Jessy mentioned it there, much like France, much like Norway, they have the bottling energy.
I agree. We'll come on to Italy. I agree with Nedum. I feel higher on Italy than I have before. But that's why I'm still not sure. But yeah, I'm generally a bit more high on Italy than I have been in the past.
Well, Italy will be pleased there is no Milena Bertolini at this tournament because she oversaw 2022 and for some reason 2023 World Cup. She didn't get sacked.
I miss her. No?
She was a funny character, but she oversaw 2 extremely stinky performances at major tournaments for Italy. And you mentioned, some good results recently for Italy. So they will be looking at this group and thinking we've got a really good chance at finishing second and progressing. Gilly, how do you see this group playing out? Do you think Italy have a good chance of getting through?
Yeah, I'll put Italy in second place in the group. I just think with Belgium, I just think they lack the consistency, the up and down results of being able to obviously get a result, for example, against England, and in the next game you're getting thumped 5-0. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think for me, I think majority of people would be saying Spain will be top of that group anyway. But then, I favour Italy to sit in second place.
It's funny actually, you said that Italy would be thinking they're going to finish second. Why would they be thinking that? What are the last 2 results against Spain?
Well, I think the Spain that you got to take.
I'm talking about football delusion now. I'm talking about football delusion now.
I know, but you've got to take Spain out of the equation, and you've just got to think.
Italy have arguably they basically have the best record in Europe against Spain. So if anyone should be feeling good, it is them.
So you think they should be looking at topping the group?
No, I'm saying you should stop telling them that they should only try and finish second. Slight difference.
Yeah, I know. I think that's
because I think Spain will finish top. But just going off, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Gilly, but just a feeling you have within yourself. They've played against Spain twice, and the games they might have suffered at some points and so on, but they've drawn and they've beaten them. So when they go and play them the next time, they're not going to believe they're just going to lose the game, and that might be delusional, but it's a nice place to be at now. Yeah,
I think if you know you come up against a team, especially Spain as well, do you know what I mean, where they can pickpocket around players. But you'll have that confidence if you know you've obviously got a win and got a draw. It's just then doing it on a main stage as such.
Can I please advise everyone to go on the Italian manager's Wikipedia page, because it is one of the all-time great Wikipedia pictures.
Wow, it's basically a selfie that you took at the pub.
Selfie. I love it.
And Italy maybe have the luxury, maybe Portugal would have been the ideal opener, but Italy opened the tournament against Belgium, which I think is probably a decent game to have as your first one of the tournament. So if they win that, you win one and you're already in a good position to make out of the group, because it is a small tournament. And I think they'll be giving themselves a decent chance. And then their second match is against Portugal. So by the time they face Spain in that last game,
they could be enjoying a playoff for first place.
Yeah,
basically.
They might already be in a really good position. And I agree with you, Jessy. I think talent-wise, I think their squad looks good. I think they've also evolved a little bit from the controversy that surrounded a lot of that Bertolini era as well. They've moved some of the older players on. They've still got experience in there as well. So I think this is a group they'll feel confident. But let's get on to Portugal, because I think for me, they're probably the team that's going to struggle the most. They were in England's Nations League group. They were in Spain's Nations League group. and they've also played Belgium fairly recently. So this is the kind of real Nations League repeat again. Kiki Nazareth is in their bumper provisional squad, which I think they named something ridiculous like 35 players. So they've still got a long way to go to get it down to 23. Her season was cut short because she had to have surgery, didn't make it back before the end of the season for the Champions League final. So TBC on whether she will make the tournament. Maybe they'll take her in the hope that she could make the last group game, but it does seem like a real push whether she'll make it. They lack goals and she's their main creative outlet. We obviously saw that equaliser she scored against England when she came on. And I think that is going to be Portugal's biggest issue is they can really leak goals, especially against Spain. They lost 7-1 to them recently. And Belgium have, probably the one that they'll feel like they're closest to on a level in this group. But it really is just going to be whether that they can challenge any other teams. Does anyone give Portugal a chance of getting out of this group?
No.
I just think recently it just feels like they've leaked goals, and I know like to play England and Spain, like, you know, it's easy to end up like really under the cosh, although obviously England haven't been particularly free scoring recently. But I just thought it against England at Wembley, I thought they were so poor.
Oh, it could have been 10.
And they just seem to have defensively have sort of no idea who was doing what, who was tracking who and where. And I just think if you're going to be the sort of underdog team who upsets stuff at a tournament, you need to at least be able to like keep games tight. And it just feels like in a number of matches, they've just let games totally get away from them. And even when they drew with England, which was obviously a really big result for them, even in that first half, it felt like if England had been more clinical in front of goal, a similar thing could have happened. And England, I thought, were profligate with their chances. And as a result, they were able to hold on. They made a formation change. Nazareth came on. They got the equaliser. And, you know, I think there was criticism there for Wiegman not being able to react to that. But I just think, yeah, generally it feels like they might get blown away a bit.
And they're one of those teams that when they do concede, sometimes it can turn into goals coming in quick succession. And Gilly, that is hard as a defender as well, when you can kind of feel the rumblings of a collapse on the horizon.
Yeah, but I think I felt that when I was obviously watching a game against England, where I think it's just the manner that the goals are conceded in, where I think, like Jessy says, there's no tracking. Everyone looks just all over the place. And I feel like it's that sort of domino effect of when the first one goes in, if they can't fix themselves and get themselves sorted early doors, then the other goals keep coming as well. So yeah, I just feel I don't really hold much hope for them, and I think it'll be obviously a difficult tournament for them.
Do you think that's the same in terms of leaking goals when they're playing against, say, like Belgium and Italy, though? Or do you think it's just like a problem for the better sides?
They've conceded 3 to Belgium. Like last week, basically, although in the last international break.
But then they had another game in which it was a little bit tighter. I think their other result...
They won 1-0.
They won 1-0, didn't they?
Yeah.
Clean sheet.
Yeah. But I think it's that thing. It's they either dig in and get a bit lucky, and actually their goalkeepers made some decent saves in the draw against England and in the absolute thumping against England when it could have been a lot worse. They either have these games where they dig in and kind of sneak a result, or they get absolutely smashed. And it kind of feels like, well, which end of the spectrum is it going to be on in this tournament? And I don't see them being able to do that in 3 games. I think they might be able to do that in 1. But I think it's really hard when you're in that position, when you're just relying on those kind of...
I think their order of games is tough as well. And like, I never know how much to sort of read in and think about like the order, but they have Spain and Italy and their last game is Belgium. And I think if maybe they played Belgium first, you're like, okay, like, can you just focus on getting a draw, a win in that? And then maybe you think, Spain might be a write-off, but you could get something from Italy. But my worry is when you don't have that opportunity against a team who I would say is on. I don't think Belgium are like significantly better than them. I'd say they're similar level of team. When that's not until the end, and you're potentially already on 0 points,
and you've lost 5-0 to Spain or something.
Yeah, I think that puts you in a tough position.
How many points do you reckon will get you out of the group?
This group,
for me, in this group, I think we'll see Spain and Italy win both their games against Portugal and Belgium. So I think it'll be like
6 points is the second place. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is tough. It's
almost like the opposite of Group A. Yeah. Whereas where I could see someone with like 3 points or whatever managing to get out of the group.
Yeah. Let's talk about Spain. World champions, Nations League champions, if anyone cares about Nations League, I don't know. Ranked second in the world, just behind USA. Obviously, setting the world alight, and the expectations are very high. They are the bookies' favourite for the Euros, 2-1. England are 4-1. It's very tight in those betting odds. But yeah, there's going to be so much pressure and expectation on this team to go and win this competition. England narrowly beat them in the last Euros in the quarterfinals, relying on a bit of magic late on. They beat England in the World Cup final comprehensively. And although Barcelona recently lost the Champions League to Arsenal, we know how good Spain are. They've recently beat England in the Nations League, despite England going 1-0 up. England did beat them at home in Wembley in that Nations League group, which was a very good England performance. But yeah, looking at this group, the expectation is Spain go and dominate and win the group. But my question for the floor is, will they go on and win the Euros?
Yes, I think so.
You think they'll win the Euros?
I think so, yeah. I think obviously no team's perfect, but when we talk about some of the flaws and sort of issues we have with other teams, it feels like it's a lot more than when we talk about Spain. And I think for the way that they play, obviously they can have a bad day, but then they also have so many players that can sort of step up and make a difference. You know, you're looking at, say, really obvious players like Ballon d'Or winner, Aitana, but then she's alongside Putellas, who's a, Ballon d'Or winner previously. But then you look at the forwards that they have, and you look at someone like Claudia Pina, like, will she be starting? Will she coming off the bench? Like, they have the quality, and I think so many teams will have to suffer to find a way to beat them. But, the world champions, like, who's going to stop them?
And we saw what Claudia Pino did against England, and it's much what she's been doing for Barcelona all season. She was phenomenal in that game, scored 2 really good goals, and the depth is obviously massive. And even when England worked quite hard to try and hold on to that lead, it just became harder and harder to control the game. And so much of it relies on obviously, like, when you do get the ball, you have to keep it, and you have to keep it well. So much of how Spain progressed in this competition will also be about how the other draws work out, because if England, and we're not on to that preview yet, that's on Thursday's show, but if England were to finish second in their group and Spain top their group, they wouldn't necessarily meet until the final. But if England were to top their group and Spain top their group, they would most likely meet in the semi-finals. So a lot depends on the paths and the places in which and how the chips fall, if you like. But going into this tournament, Gilly, it is unsurprising that Spain are the favourites, and they are a very good team. Do you think they're going to win the Euros?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I fancy them to do it, but I also felt in the last Euros, obviously, I know they beat England. England beat them. When I was watching England in that tournament, I felt like it was the tournament where England, there was just something there. I felt England were the route that they had, and I just felt that the results they were getting and the way the games were going, I could feel it in my waters. I felt England are going to do it. Even when they got into the final, I was like, I know England are going to win this today, even obviously against Germany. But in that game against Spain, I felt England were very lucky.
Rachel Daly got absolutely cooked by Athena Del Castillo, like all game. They were living on the edge.
Yeah, and I just remember watching it, and I was thinking, if England get the result in this game, for me, I think they're going to go on and win it. And I think for that they were really lucky. But I felt like then afterwards, Spain, obviously looking at it even in the World Cup final, I fancied Spain to get the job done. And I just think for the quality that they've got, the squad that they've got, even if you're talking about, obviously, Barcelona, we know how sort of easy as such Barcelona's league is, the players that they've got. And I feel like they've got that quality where they don't just have one match winner. They've got players that can pick the ball up from a distance and put the ball in the back of the net if it's not working out for them.
Jessy, can Spain's disappointing performance in the Paris Olympics, can that give us any kind of flavour of how they might perform here? Or do you think that the Olympic women's football for the European teams is a weirder one-off?
No, I think if you're Germany, you're feeling good about, what you can do against Spain in an international tournament. I honestly think if you're England, you could still feel good about it. I know we'll talk about England on Thursday and people are down on them. And I know Spain beat them recently, but they've played 4 halves of football against Spain in the past 6 months. And I'd say England were the better team in 3 of those 4. I think there are concerns about Montse Tome's ability to set this team up in a tactically robust way. And I think the question for Spain is, as we saw in that second half against England, does your talent advantage allow you to maybe bridge that gap? If you can bring Claudia Pina on and have her just blow a team away, then yeah. And there are lots of options for Spain in terms of doing that. But I think, other teams have shown that if you can have a really robust out-possession approach against this team, if you can put their centre-backs under pressure, we know Irene Paredes isn't the fastest. We've seen Laia Alexandri this season look a bit wobbly. Catacol, whilst she's had a good season, I think, we've seen her have catacolisms.
Very nice, very nice.
Particularly, in that Olympics, that was something where she looked quite nervy. So I would probably still have Spain as the favourites, just because I think that squad is easily the best squad. But I think the gap between them as a footballing team and between some of these other really good nations isn't as big as maybe sometimes it seems from the outside.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, I think it's probably the same way that Barcelona viewed when they went on, obviously, a winning consecutive Champions Leagues, and even when they beat Chelsea in the Champions League final a few years ago, it was very much this kind of, Barcelona unstoppable, they're unbeatable, and obviously look at what Arsenal did in the Champions League final against them. And I think perhaps we've made the same assumption and put Spain on a similar pedestal. And I think what was interesting about the Paris Olympics tournament is they looked really shaky from the off. I mean, even in the group game, which they beat Brazil ended up beating them in the semi-finals. I thought Brazil looked really good in that game. And I think that was the first time where I thought, it came at a weird time, I get it, because it was a 3rd consecutive major tournament in women's football, and it felt like that fatigue was definitely there to see. But it was also surprising to see how much they struggled. They came through against Colombia on penalties. That was a really tough game.
Well, and I think what I would say about both Colombia and Brazil in that Olympics is they played in a really aggressive attacking way where they were willing to put their forwards up 1v1 against Spain's defenders, and they got the better of them. The thing that I think will be interesting is Spain's kind of aura means lots of teams aren't willing to sort of take that risk and be as front-footed. And I think, England have shown that there are sort of other ways you could do that. And I thought, Russo in particularly the second game we played against them, she sort of had that willingness to go up and do that. And obviously England did score kind of from that. But will other teams want to do that? I don't know. I do think Germany are a team who, for me, have a lot of very hot attackers right now, who I think they could be the kind of side who, you'd really push up against them. I do think England with Lauren James and a Lauren Hemp, as well as Russo, that could be, again, a team whereby, in 1v1 situations, you can really put them under pressure. France also obviously have a lot of, Marie-Antoinette Katoto is probably going to be the most physically dominating striker at the tournament, aside maybe from Hegerberg, who I don't think physically is imposing as she once was. So it will be interesting to see how much teams take risks against Spain, because I think you have to take the risk to get the reward against them. And if you choose to sit off them, they will find a way through you. They will punish you. But I do think also we've seen this Spain team is that sometimes if plan A isn't working, there's not necessarily a plan B.
The plan B is just chuck Claudia Pina on and she's on the bench.
Whichever one of Pina and Salma didn't start. Yeah. Can I just say a word for Esther Gonzalez? Because that girl is having like one of the best seasons of her career with Gotham. She's scoring for fun right now. And I think, you know, Spain, obviously sort of the Patri, Alexia, Aitana midfield trio get a lot of justified credit. And Pina's obviously really caught the eye in a number of games this season. But I'm kind of loving Esther having this
It's amazing. And it's
run.
also nice to see a kind of more old school forward as well, who I think England would be, you know, they looked nervous when they played her in the Nations League. And I think she'll cause a lot of problems in this tournament. So then let's wrap up Group B before we wrap up the show. Who are the two teams that make out of Group B, Gilly?
I've gone for Spain and Italy.
Jessy?
Yeah.
Spain and Belgium.
Spain and Belgium. Nedum's always just here to kind of check things up. Hipster choice. Okay, I'm going Spain and Italy. The boring choice. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, well, that's our first group preview episode done. Nedum, how'd you find it?
It's a lot of fun. Can we do it again?
We will be doing it again on Thursday. Wow, spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry,
We're going to be back on Thursday. Jill, see you then.
Yep, see you then.
Jessy, see you then.
Can't wait.
All right, we'll be back on Thursday looking at Group C and D. Of course, Group D with England and Wales. See you then.